In military strategy, there is a deadly paradox. When your opponent shows you an easy path to victory, you are walking into your own coffin. The Kremlin recently deployed a massive force of 100,000 troops in the north, aiming directly for the heart of Kyiv and total victory. But why do experts claim that the more troops they have, the deadlier the trap? The secret lies in a domino falling at Kupiansk. The greatest mistake a hunter can make is focusing too much on the prey in front, while forgetting the deadly trap set behind them. Putin wanted to use his massive force at Chernihiv as a decisive blow, but Ukraine taught the world a lesson in the art of asymmetry. Today, we analyze how a smaller force broke $1 billion plan using strategic thinking, proving that numbers are not everything in modern warfare. In May 2026, Western intelligence satellites issued a red alert as a ghost army of 100,000 Russian soldiers gathered in deep forests. Their plan was clear: recreate the deep strike of 2022 and force Kyiv to surrender through sheer numerical intimidation and overwhelming firepower. In modern war, such a massive operation requires a stable foundation in the east. Moscow believed they controlled the board with absolute certainty. But they committed a fatal error in strategic management: the arrogance of the superior. They underestimated the resistance brewing in the small industrial sectors. While the world looked north, Ukraine looked east toward Kupiansk. This small industrial hub would become the turning point for the entire war effort. The first lesson is simple: to destroy a giant machine, do not strike the body. Find the smallest gear under the highest pressure. The Kremlin threw their elite units here, including the 1st Guards Tank Army. They expected a quick victory through overwhelming armored strength and aggression. However, Ukraine did not fight head-on. They applied a divide-and-conquer strategy, focusing on cutting logistics and isolating Russian units from their support. In the Kupiansk Central Hospital and industrial pipes under the Oskil, Russian soldiers thought they were invisible as they moved through underground tunnels. Under the thermal eyes of Achilles drone units, these pipes became inescapable traps. The Russian infiltration teams were hunted with terrifying mechanical precision. By destroying the bridges across the Oskil, Ukraine turned the river into a natural wall, completely isolating Russian reinforcements from the main battle zone. The world's most modern tanks became useless scrap metal. They didn't lose because they lacked guns, but because they lacked fuel and mobility. By late May, when Kupiansk was fully cleared, a classic domino effect began, offering a harsh lesson in the necessity of resource agility. The failure at Kupiansk forced the Kremlin to pull strategic reserves from the north, throwing them into the eastern quagmire to save face. Meanwhile, Ukraine suddenly had 50,000 battle-hardened troops available. These soldiers were experts in urban warfare and drone coordination, ready for rotation. This massive force was immediately pivoted back to the Chernihiv front. Ukraine effectively doubled their strength at the most critical point of the war. Russia lost their best cards, while their 100,000 troops in the north became a hollow shell, lacking quality and elite support. But the most terrifying thing waiting for Russia was a 300-kilometer steel wall, stretching from the Kyiv reservoir all the way to Sumy. This defense line was a masterpiece of military engineering, featuring over 2,000 specialized bunkers capable of withstanding heavy, continuous artillery fire. Every position was connected by underground tunnels, allowing troops to move and resupply without ever being exposed to Russian drones or airstrikes. Electronic warfare systems were buried deep, paralyzing Russian reconnaissance drones for 100 kilometers. The Russian eyes were effectively poked out and blinded. To break such a defense, an attacker needs 5 times the force and a perfect supply line. Russia now faced an impossible mathematical equation. They lost the element of surprise and their elite cover. Their logistics were now threatened from the east, leaving the northern force vulnerable. Sun Tzu said, "Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated." The Russian generals failed this fundamental test miserably. Their biggest mistake wasn't miscalculating troop numbers, but believing their own propaganda reports while ignoring the cold reality on the ground. The victory at Kupiansk was an indirect checkmate. It turned the Russian northern blitzkrieg into a desperate, suicidal gamble for the Kremlin's leadership. The war in 2026 has entered a new chapter where numbers no longer decide the outcome, but technology and flexibility rule the day. The question is no longer if the Kremlin will attack. The question is, will they march into the trap or accept a humiliating retreat? What do you think of this bold pivot strategy? Share your analysis in the comments below and join the conversation on global geopolitics. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep strategic insights. Thank you for watching. I am GeoGrid Intel, and I will see you next time. Western intelligence agencies were stunned by the sheer scale of the Russian buildup, fearing a total collapse of the northern defenses. The amount of ammunition and fuel moved to the border suggested a campaign meant to last for months of high-intensity urban combat. Kyiv stood in the crosshairs once again, but this time, the city was a fortress prepared for the worst the Kremlin could deliver. The Ukrainian high command knew they couldn't just defend. They had to break the enemy's momentum before the first shot was fired. The strategy was to make the Russian numerical advantage their greatest weakness by stretching their lines until they finally snapped. When the counterattack at Kupiansk began, it wasn't a wave of soldiers, but a calculated storm of precision steel and intelligence. Every truck that didn't reach the front line was a tank that couldn't move, and a soldier who couldn't fight. The precision of the drone strikes changed the math of the battlefield, making large formations of armor easy targets for cheap weapons. Morale in the Russian ranks began to crumble as they realized their unstoppable force was being picked apart by an invisible enemy. Ukraine's construction of the steel wall was a race against time, proving that engineering is just as vital as infantry in defense. With hardwired communications, the Ukrainian defenders were immune to the electronic jamming that usually plagues modern army coordination. These static defenses were designed to funnel Russian tanks into kill zones where pre-aimed artillery was waiting to strike. The Kremlin's plan was falling apart before it even started, as the reality of the Ukrainian defenses became clear to Moscow. Ukraine's Achilles units became the stuff of nightmares for Russian tankers, striking with impunity from miles away with total accuracy. By blinding the enemy, Ukraine forced the massive Russian force to move blindly into a landscape specifically designed for their destruction. One by one, the iron fist of the Kremlin was being blunted tank by tank, unit by unit, in a war of attrition. The defenders knew that if they held the line here, the threat to their capital would vanish for years to come. This line was not just a wall of concrete. It was a wall of national will built by a people who refused to break. As the sun rose on the new front, the strategic balance had shifted irrevocably in favor of the defenders. The bravery of those at Kupiansk saved millions in Kyiv from the horrors of a new siege and urban destruction. Even the state-controlled media struggled to explain how such a massive force could be neutralized so effectively by a smaller opponent. Time is a weapon in war, and Russia was running out of it as their window for a successful offensive closed tightly. The fields that were meant to be a highway for the Kremlin's tanks became their graveyard, blooming with a different kind of hope. Innovation proved to be the ultimate multiplier, turning a defensive struggle into a masterclass of modern tactical superiority. In the end, it was not the size of the army that mattered, but the spirit of the people and the intelligence of their leaders. History will remember this campaign as the moment when the old ways of war were finally buried by the new reality. The loss of prestige for the Kremlin's military machine is a wound that may never fully heal in the eyes of the world. Because of the gambit at Kupiansk, the streets of the capital remained safe, and the children could play without fear of missiles. Every strategic objective was met, proving that Ukraine's military had evolved into one of the most capable forces on the planet. The river remains a silent witness to the destruction of an elite army and the birth of a new military legend. When we look at the data, the outcome was inevitable from the moment the first Russian tank ran out of fuel. The predator has become the prey, caught in a trap of its own making, blinded by its own ambition and pride. Global military academies will study these maneuvers for decades, teaching the next generation the power of the indirect checkmate. The light of resistance burns brighter than ever, fueled by the knowledge that even the largest giant can be brought down. The war continues, but the momentum has shifted, and the shadow over Kyiv has been lifted by the courage of a few. This chapter of the invasion ends not with a bang of victory for the Kremlin, but with the whimper of a failed strategy. We fight so that the next generation never has to learn the names of these battlefields or the sound of the sirens. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the strategy of the Kupiansk pivot. Your support keeps this channel alive. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and always look beyond the surface of the headlines. Goodbye, and we will see you in the next